Hey guys, just carrying over from the last one now. It's about 400 pages long, so this could take a while to get through the whole lot, but I'm going to go through the whole lot because nobody else is doing this, and I think it needs to be said and needs to be read. And yeah, so I'll carry on now. And the last bit was authors can be seen scribbling madly as she peers through a jam-packed plastic bag a cop hauls away. The Miami Herald's page 1 story quoted Officer Scott Hunt. It is our belief that these kids were not kidnapped, but that their parents gave them away because one of the rites of passage into this satanic organisation is that you have to give up your rights to your children and that the leaders of this organisation can do what they want to with your children. In the Tallahassee Democrat's page 1 story, Hunt was quoted, "As far as we're concerned, this goes from coast to coast and from Canada to Mexico. There is no doubt in our mind that this will have at least national, if not international, repercussions." The FBI had joined the case to look into the transportation of children across state lines for immoral purposes or kidnapping. US Customs was contributing its Satanism and pornography expertise. Interpol was investigating a tip about Holwell. The Tallahassee Police Department was awash in the media flood. "I had 75 reporters waiting for me in the lobby," says Hunt. "We logged 450 telephone calls to me in 2 days. They were bringing in overtime people to help take messages. Hundreds of calls were from parents claiming the children. Canvassing the nation for kids' parents were the National Center for Exploited Children, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Child Find, Children's Clearinghouse, the National Child Safety Council, and the National Association of Missing Children. Aside from a bomb threat phoned into the house holding the kids, they were physically safe as they could be." Saturday night, 3 days after the arrest, the finders went public with their story. Is this a new one or is this carried over? Finders went public with their story. Something Gardner Terrell, CPA, formerly with the Internal Revenue Service, sent a memo to DC and Tallahassee Police, the FBI, HRS, and Juvenile Court Judge, the FBI, Dan Rather, and the Washington Post with a stab at wit and humour. The finder's trademark Terrell headed the memo subject investigative leads. This memo is respectively offered in the hope that it will clear up some misunderstanding concerning the current missing children case receiving so much media coverage, he wrote. Terrell explained that in early January, Ammerman, a landscape gardener, and Stanley Burns, an architect, had taken the 7 children to Berea, Kentucky, to help the Reverend Jim Wicker build a retirement community called New Hope. Sure. Terrell gave the name and phone number of a Berea couple who helped care for the kids during their visit and said the plan had been to enroll them in the couple's Montessori school while the community was being built. Because the Reverend Weicker was not so ready to break ground for New Hope, because the Reverend Weicker was not ready to break ground for New Hope, wrote Terrell, the men took the children on a vacation camping trip to the warmer climate of Florida with the full applause and approval of the children's mothers. Terrell wrote that he drove to Florida with Holwell, computer programmers Christian Herbst and Thomas R. Van Dusen, and Robert M. Meyer. Herbst noted Terrell has a Harvard M.A., while Meyer is a Princeton and Oxford M.A. "When we were satisfied that the children were safely in the hands of 5 capable adults, Mr. Meyer and I left Florida. On the day of the arrest, Holwell and Ammerman took the kids to the park, while the 3 other men looked for accommodations." Why are all these men with these children? "The mothers had fully authorised these men in writing to care for their children and expressed full confidence in them," wrote Terrell, referring to the authorisation letters in the van's glove compartment. All of the mothers are now in San Francisco working in business offices, earning money to help pay for New Hope. Oh, this sounds like a big scam. Terrell, or whatever his name is, who claimed he owned the raided Glover Park home and the Northeast warehouse, closed by saying he considered the arrests and raids mistakes, not violations of civil liberties, not a humiliating pain in the ass. Sorry. Over here in Australia we say it's just an ass. Not a wholly unnecessary bureaucratic fuck-up. Mistakes, that's all. His memo included his phone number in an offer to help in any way he could. Reporters and police never poked a hole in Terrell's even-toned and cordial letter. From Barrow, Kentucky, the Reverend Jim Weicker, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, guys, confirmed that the men and children had stayed with him for a week in January. The $6-year-old, what? I'm going blind. The 86-year-old retired non-denominational minister was a rock-solid source, he told the Louisville Courier-Journal. He met the finders at a meeting of commune proponents a few years before. Yeah, this just sounds too sus to me. What do you think, guys? That past November, he told them about his New Hope plans, and January the 9th, they popped in to help. The only thing we discussed was the land and the building and the children's centre, he said. I'm not trying to uphold the folks from Washington. I don't know them. All I know is what I saw. The report of 3 other men, I can't read that, something bed with police had gotten about a white van travelling tips. Police had gotten about a white van travelling with the blue van. Several state police had even been put on the lookout for a white van. On Sunday, a college student and part-time Tallahassee Police Department employee brought to police a TRS-80 computer he found. The police service told me the student brought the computer in on Thursday, but that the police wanted to explore its files for a few days. Files on the computers included a report from the 3 men Terrell mentioned in his memo, Hurst, Van Dusen and Mayer. This trio had left Holwell and Emmerman at 10 a.m. Wednesday morning. They were dressed in suits and ties. The van had been cleaned up and the kids had been dressed in clean clothes. They had a large amount of produce with them and the kids had a breakfast buffet before they left. The confiscated report reads, Holwell and Emmerman were supposed to link up with the men via their electronic mailbox until they read SS's report. The next morning, the 3 men had no idea where Holwell and Emmerman had gone. SS's report didn't send them into a panic, though. One spent the day earning a few dollars helping at Cripple, while the other 2 researched an article about desktop publishing at Tallahassee's Florida State University Library. Other files in the TRS-80 included a report from a member working in Hong Kong and a short note from MDP Marion D. Petty to the kids' game, dated the 5 a.m. Tuesday morning. It reads, if authoritarians approach again, say that you are on the way to Mexico to start a school and that you are authorized by the mothers to do this. It feels like a hostile act when the kids are found not to be in school. If they ask, tell about their degrees, plus a few that they don't have. Announce that you're going to call the school, Harvard University, for bright kids. The Sunday Washington Post ran two-page one stories on the finders. One headline, Cult Member Defends 2 Men in Child Abuse Case. We are all in a state right now where we are afraid. We've been made almost dysfunctional by the reports, Terrell told the Post in what the paper called a lengthy telephone interview. Terrell described the bloodletting ritual as the slaughter of 2 goats kept on a farm in Virginia. The goats had been killed for food, he said, and the kids had watched the slaughter as an educational experience. The Post's conversation with Terrell came shortly after police raided 5 finders' properties in 2 small Virginia towns near Old Rag Mountain, Etlin, and Nethers. Again, the Post satisfied the reader's longing to peer behind the curtain, no matter what might be there. The door of one cabin was open yesterday, revealing large amounts of food, clothing, sleeping bags, books, and pamphlets from groups such as the World Future Society. The article revealed a plastic bag containing hundreds of neckties and several pairs of pantyhose were on the floor, along with boxes of diapers. The past coverage included juicy tidbits in a paragraph 16 of one of the stories, according to a US customs spokesman. Agents who knew photos seized in the DC raids said some of them appeared to involve sex between adults and kids. This appeared balanced with the DC police source calling the picture no more pornographic than what you find in your average home. Dear God. Later in the story, a DC police source confided that the DC raids didn't turn up anything anywhere. Yeah, it's been hidden. Someone's trying to hide something. We had 2 separate investigations going on, ours and the media's, says Tallahassee Police Lieutenant Joe Ann Van Meter, who supervised the beginning of the investigation. How do we know the media weren't trying to cover this up and maybe alerting people to what was happening? Yeah, I don't know, guys. Who supervised the beginning of the investigation? I never expected the media attention I got, says Tallahassee Police spokesman Hunt. Never. That's the problem you have with multiple jurisdictions. The media was playing off all of us and making it a bigger story. Oh, it sounds like the police. Oh, I don't know. On Monday, day 6 of the Finders Crisis, Washington Metropolitan Police began to slink away from the case. There you go. The day before, DC detectives Jim Bradley and Eric Witzig had interrogated the kids in Tallahassee. Bradley, who had requested the DC search warrant, said his visit to Tallahassee was prompted by 3 separate accounts of the Glover Park house's basement. Exactly what he was looking for in Tallahassee, escaped investigator Wiegand, who wrote in her report for that day, he indicated that there may have been a hole dug in the walls or the floor of the basement for unknown reasons. Judging from the Tallahassee reports, the DC detectives' trip to Florida was a waste. They didn't learn much more than Mary could count to 10 in Chinese. The chief in DC sent up what does it say? A something and a cry in the beginning, says Tallahassee Lieutenant Van Meter. And then when his guys didn't come up with anything, he backed away. Sent a hoe and a cry in the beginning? I don't know. By Monday, Washington's out of this. They're shutting down, recalls Lieutenant Van Meter. We're getting calls from Chief in DC telling our chief we don't have anything by. Monday was also the day Tallahassee got first wind of Marion Petty's whereabouts. Lieutenant Lee Hart of the Culpeper, Virginia Police Department informed Tallahassee that he had contact with the finders. Hart said this contact told him Petey put out the word for members to flee and hide, and Petey would probably go to Andrews Air Force Base and catch a military plane flight to China. Guys, knowing what we know, this connects a lot of dots. This was plausible. Petty, a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, had the right to free standby military transport. Monday also saw a visit to the Washington, D.C. field office of the FBI by one of the finders' mothers and the 3 men from the white van. An FBI report of the interviews gives the impression that Herbst, Van Dusen and Mayer had remained calm until they read the newspaper accounts on Friday morning, February 6. They realised they were being portrayed as child abusers and Satanists. Frightened, the three decided to return to WDC and figure out what to do. In Monday's Washington Post, Terrell explained the men's silence and passivity. Finders members' labels arrest all a big mistake. Shortly before the Tallahassee arrest, they had been stopped by police in Marion County, Florida, and that incident, combined with 10 years of being hassled by DC cops, convinced the men that it would be better to deal with the judge than unreasonable police. The judge. Another finder's mother called the Tallahassee police Monday and asked whether the mothers would be arrested if they come to claim their kids. We couldn't give the mothers the guarantee they wouldn't be arrested, said Lieutenant Van Meter. The mother agreed to call back the next day. 2 more mothers visited the FBI in DC on Tuesday. Everyone interviewed states child abuse and child sexual exploitation is normal part of their beliefs, and sex with children is morally reprehensible, the FBI report states. It doesn't make sense. All have complete confidence in the ability of any of their group to care for the children. They do not in any way, shape, or form practice Satanism, and all are eager for the return of their children. Everyone interviewed agreed to be polygraphed by the FBI should the need arise. 2 more mothers were to be interviewed the next day, the report explains, and after that the mothers were planning to head to Tallahassee. We have not uncovered any indication of violation of a federal statute, the report concludes. We had pretty much tied up the case, Investor Wiegand says. By Tuesday, the Post had consigned the finder's story to the Metro Section DC Police, finders odd, not criminal. That night, Terrell invited reporters into the finder's warehouse for interview. Sitting with his back to the cameras, a Ronald Reagan mask covering the hind part of his head, he explained that the mothers hadn't come forward because they were waiting out the storm. Yep, the storm. Here comes the storm, guys. Terrell also told reporters he was playing the role of Ginks K. Plato. Tallahassee police spokesman Hunt was flabbergasted. Why are we doing this jousting in the media? I believe Mr. Terrell could go a long way in clearing this case if he produced the mothers of these children as he says he can. He told the Tallahassee Democrat on Tuesday. Up till that point, people said the old police department did some pretty dumb things, recalls investigator Rick Huffman, who inherited the case from Wiegand when she left for vacation. Then there's this clown on TV saying all these stupid things. People started saying that's too stupid to be any kind of cult. In Tallahassee, it turned out that this whole thing was perceived as a joke. Though Wiegand believed the case was wrapped up Tuesday, she still wondered why the mothers had not hightailed it down to Tallahassee the day they learned of the arrest. Seems to me that people who have never done anything wrong have nothing to fear, says Wiegand. What were they hiding? If it were me, I'd blindly go get my child. Sex, confusion, small-mindedness, fear, the press and the enigmatic finders kept jolting the finder's case back to life. HRS recruited Chicago psychologist Dr. Naaman Greenberg to tackle the question of sexual abuse. Known for his sex abuse work in the Manhattan Beach, California preschool case, Greenberg held a series of interviews with the kids. His conclusion, the evidence was inconclusive. The tangle of law enforcement outfits working the case continued to confuse everyone. A couple of officers in DC, our arrests as an excuse to go to the warehouse, says a Tallahassee officer who asked for anonymity. They were obsessed with this group. They wanted access. Larry Kahana, a DC journalist and author of the current book Cults That Kill, Spoke with police about the finders while researching his book. The finders are not mentioned in his book, nor does he classify them as a cult that kills. Finders were operating here for 25 years, says Kahana, and as far as I know, law enforcement had nothing on them. I think that was a very embarrassing thing. Not that they got caught with their pants down, but they were at least halfway down. Investigator Huffman is the only Tallahassee officer who squarely discussed problems in his own department with me. He said the arresting officers did right. You really have to commend them. It's easier to cut someone loose than to get involved. But, he says, if you get down to the bottom line, people have the right to remain silent. A sociology major in college, Huffman says he compared the finders to the Amish. Different, not bad, yet he cautions they do have their immaturities. Our chief of police wasn't here, says Huffman. He's very progressive and has the ability to think in new ways. But I had to deal with the deputy chief. He had already written the group off. There was a meeting with the FBI, HRS, State's Attorney Guardian ad litem, a legal advocate for the kids. Everybody. I had only said one thing, let's be objective. He let out a sigh I can still remember. He said, directed at me, something to the effect of, if it swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, and looks like a duck, what the hell more do you need? Obviously, these men should be sent down the river. Huffman says the deputy chief meant well, but he had a very narrow view. Really? I'd say someone's definitely got a narrow view, and I don't think it's the one questioning all of this. That would be the people who aren't questioning enough. Sorry guys, had a drink of my tea before I cough. Separate Florida agencies were battling over what to do with the case too. It became a political ball that bounced from one agency to the next, says Lieutenant Van Meter. HRS and the state's attorney didn't want to let go of it, but they kept insisting there was more to it. We got really embarrassed. It got to be a real circus. Willie Meggs, the state attorney, handled both the adult and juvenile cases. Willie gets up every morning and takes his righteous indignation pill, says Van Meter. He's very religious and very conservative. To him, these people were heretics. He's the kind of guy who has mum tattooed on one arm and apple pie on the other. To him, they are living wrong and living bad. The HRS care worker came off like that too. Yes, well, I think these people are a bit too progressive, and the conservative actually had it right for questioning further, knowing what we know now. Sherry Walker, the assistant state's attorney first assigned to the juvenile case, stepped down because she believed her office was projecting our own morals on this group. Pardon? Walker, who was running for state senate, doesn't badmouth Willie Meggs. She thinks he was doing his job as an elected official. Tallahassee is very conservative. Anything not Southern Baptist is fearful to the people. In this conservative environment, it looked like the mothers were unfit. We believe that kids should get 3 meals, clean clothes, and be put to bed at a decent hour. And so does most people. So do most people. This is coming from a very slanted point of view, this article. You can see it. In this area, women are the primary caretakers, Mr. Meggs. Primary caretakers. Mr. Meggs was elected by the same conservative group, Walker says. Meggs did have very deep feelings about this case, Walker allows. When you have such deep feelings about what you think is right and wrong, it does slow things up. Well, no, there's right and wrong. Simple as that. There's no degrees of right and wrong, or well, there might be a little bit of a degree of right and wrong, but depending on which way you're looking at it. So what I'm saying is, really, most normal people would look at this as all wrong, including the 5 men in suits or whatever looking after these kids, and the mother's just giving the kids away. While Meggs, who displays a Holy Bible in his office, says he thinks the case went on so long because Holwell and Emmerman refused to cooperate. The defendants acted like horsetails, he said. They were all secretive. If blame has to be placed anywhere, it ought to be placed on these people. Meggs says his office wanted to be absolutely sure of the kids' safety. We weren't just willing to let them go to these women who claimed to be their mothers. Good thing you should have taken DNA tests, but then there might not have been DNA testing back then. I can't remember when this is from. Meg's 93. Yeah, there was. Yeah, it was coming out. Meg's office repeatedly offered plea bargains in the Holwell and Emmerman cases. We didn't have anything, Meg says, point blank. When it's all boiled down, when you get down to the final analysis, I just wanted to get out of Dodge. I just wanted them to get out of Dodge. Meg stands by his office's actions. We all have a soft spot for kids, he says. I certainly hope that the citizenry would want us to get to the bottom of a case like this. The only thing I wish is that we could have done our... Where is it? Our what? Investigation without the press. Wow. Must be an old newspaper clipping, or it is, obviously. Nearly everyone who tangoed with the Finders affair slagged the media, including the media, and blamed them for protracting the cases. Some attacks were, of course, kill the messenger. Others whipped reporters for all the right reasons. Some were more introspective complaints. Others lamented the constraints of late 20th century journalism, where it is the medium, not the message. This became a big story because the press made it a big deal, Scott Hunt says. Hunt, who took flack for announcing sexual abuse and Satanism in the case, is red in the face now. How do you think I got this information? By osmosis, somebody told me. One report that especially irks Hunt was originated by WUSA and rebroadcast by the Tallahassee CBS affiliate. They prefaced the story, fact, Tallahassee Police Department has botched this investigation, says Hunt. The local station invited Hunt to the studio to rebut. I went live on the air and called the DC affiliate a bunch of liars, he said, with the satisfaction. I didn't bear any bones. I let the CBS affiliate have it right between the eyes. Rick Huffman doesn't let Hunt or others in his department off so easily. Part of the problem, he says, is that Tallahassee Police Department wasn't used to national attention. We had Connie Chung call us up. He remembers our old PIO, Public Information Officer Hunt, is flapping his gills all over the department. According to Huffman, Hunt said, "This is it, folks. This is my day. Connie Chung is going to interview me." Huffman, who didn't give any interviews, something took over the case, says publicity meant power, money, promotion to some on the staff. Others, he said, like Hunt, had purer motives. They were like, wow, we may be the impetus to bring down pedophilia all over the world. Impetus, that's it. To bring down pedophilia all over the world. We're the snowball at the top of the mountain. I've heard this before. Snowball, avalanche, Q. You have it all, they said. And I'm reading it now, part of it. We're the snowball at the top of the mountain. Maybe we can do some good. But Huffman didn't believe this was a credible case. They had no experience dealing with a case of this sensitivity, Huffman says. They were passing along circumstantial evidence to The media. Huffman was particularly by the rankled by the allegations of sexual abuse. I told them, you people are dealing with fire. For you to mention possible sexual battery to the media, they don't hear possible. You are proposing the idea. This is where the inexperience hurt them. They should have personally gone to the doctor and had a good tete-a-tete to find out how far we were going to go with this. If the doctor had said we had semen something on the girl, they should have asked, well, did you find a little, a lot? Where did you find it? If it was inside the vagina, it would be different than on the foot. Really? I just think we jump to conclusions. The ordinarily toothless post-ombudsman Joseph Latin was critical of his paper's Finder's coverage. He chomped into his colleagues. The news stories were laced with unnamed sources, innuendo abounded, he wrote. Facts were in short supply, but space in the Post wasn't. In the Washington Journalism Review's Finder's Critique, the news director of WRC-TV was asked if his reporters were too quick to trust the authorities. Well, they're initially your source, he said, and as long as you report it as such, you're reporting a news story. I mean, you're not an investigative agency, we're journalists. That tells you a lot. Maybe police did jump the gun. I don't know. These things tend to look very different in hindsight. Getting facts straight is tough. As I showed in a piece of Finder's press criticism I wrote for City Paper, I incorrectly reported that the men faced sexual abuse charges. I incorrectly stated their bond, and I incorrectly said they were arrested February 5th, and I only faced a weekly deadline. Tallahassee Democrat reporter Jan Pudlow, who did some of the best reporting on the group and stuck with it long after the pack had gone home, says the Finders have to shoulder some of the blame for the media's goofs. If you were looking at the media's responsibility to capture the truth about these people, I've got to admit I've got a little bit of bitterness lingering because these people did not make it easy for reporters to tell the truth about them, says Pudlow. You know what they call wit and humour? I was part of their wit and humour. The wit is being deceitful and downright lying, and what they call humour isn't real funny. I've been in the business about 10 years, and I realise when you interview somebody, everybody uses a little manipulation, we all know that, but I've never been so blatantly manipulated as by this group. Pudlow, the first reporter to interview the mothers, said when they came to Tallahassee, says, if the Finders told me today that they were coordinating... Okay, I was just interrupted by my strange neighbour. Okay. I don't know where I was up to, but everybody uses a little manipulation. We all know that, but I've never been so blatantly manipulated as by this group. Pudlow, the first reporter to interview the mothers when they came to Tallahassee, says if the Finders told me today they were coordinating the second coming of Christ and there was Jesus at their right hand, I still wouldn't want to get a quote from them. I first called the Glover Park home in late June, dialing one of the many Finders phone numbers listed in the Tallahassee police documents. Guten Tag, said the answering machine. Nai Han Konnichiwa. I didn't leave a message. I then called the Northeast Warehouse and the group member Bob Mayer answered. I requested a group interview and told Mayer I had police records. I dropped a detail to Mayer that not many people know. When they arrived in Tallahassee to claim their kids, the Finders' mothers told police the group did not call itself the Finders. Finders, they said, was the name of a business the group no longer ran. That's right, Mayer said, laughing. As we spoke, I could hear the punctuated chatter of a computer keyboard. Mayer recording our conversation. I can't read that. Because the finders refer to themselves as both the finders and the so-called finders. I call them the finders throughout the article for consistency's sake. I offered to send the group clips, including my press critique. A few days later, July 2nd, they left a message on my home answering machine. I had not given Maya my home number, though it is listed. Hello, the message began. This is the so-called finders calling for John Cohen on Saturday at 8:30 in the evening. Sorry we didn't get through to you. Maybe we'll get together later. I called them back at the warehouse to see about an interview. I got a rhyming message that went something like this. Could we but another's year, our windy salutations here, 'twould make us meet, be quick then, as our Lord requests, a truthful foal of wit and rest, we bid thee speak. I left a message. The next day, City Paper's receptionist buzzed me and said Steve Usden was here to see me. Since I didn't recognise the name, I asked her to put him on the phone. This is Steve Usden from the so-called finders, he said. I ran downstairs. Usden, clean-shaven, dressed in a conservative coat and tie, was maybe in his mid-20s. I told him I was swamped and asked if we could meet the next day. I don't know, he said. I'll set tomorrow aside and wait in the office all day, I said eagerly. Don't do that for me, he said. I don't make appointments. Oh, special. Well, I'll be there, I said. Not on my account, I hope, Usden said. There was more sincerity than sternness in his voice. He took out a reporter's notebook and asked me for my phone numbers. You already have them, I said. Oh, yes, he answered. Well, I look forward to making this work. That was the last I saw of Usden for a month. Over the weekend of July 16, the finders hand-delivered an envelope to City Paper office. Inside was a photocopy note that reads, to John Cohen, Mr. MD, last name inked out, Finders, 17th of July 1988. If you want to do an in-depth study of the finders, it would be best to do an in-depth study of the troubadours, and similar movements, or you won't understand what we're talking about. Oh. The finders often use the Encyclopaedia Britannica as a source book. The 1987 edition of the Britannica describes troubadours and trouveurs as closely related lyric poet-musicians who traipsed through France, Spain and Italy in the 12th and 13th centuries, adored by the courts. Their verse typically explored love. Their poetry also set up lyrical conversations about matters of religious, metaphysical or satirical character. The word troubadour, notes Britannica, is a French form derived from the Occitanian order to find, to invent. Is that? Yeah. On July 19th, I left another message on the warehouse answering machine. Later that day, Kristen North, whose son Ben Franklin was held in Tallahassee, called me back. These people are in Atlanta covering the convention, two are in Japan, and one had to go to San Francisco on an emergency. North said, can we meet later? On July 26, I called the warehouse yet again and asked for Steve Usden. Bob Mayer answered and said Usden wasn't there. Since Mayer was the first person I spoke with a month before, I asked him what it was going to take to arrange an interview. Is there a time that's best for you, he asked. I told him my schedule and he assured me he'd do what he could. 2 days later, Kristen North called me. We have an information gift for you, North said. She invited me to pick it up at the Glover Park house. Can we meet for an interview, I asked. After you read this, you probably have more questions. When I arrived at the Glover Park house, North led me to a lounge that has a world map covering one wall and made me a cup of tea. She was kind enough, striking me as more nervous than zombie-like. She reminded me of an actress doing an improvisation who was trying a little too hard to maintain a character. I was nervous too. In all fairness, I was also in character and trying hard to maintain it. From my readings and dealings with group members, I knew she intended to interview me as I intended to interview her. My goal was to regulate what I said, not to blather on to something, the tension. I took out a stack of papers from a package she handed me, my information gift. The first page cracked me up. To John Cohen, enclosed are some information gifts. I'm planning to do an in-depth study of John Cohen, his associates, and his relatives. How do you suggest I go about it? I told North I didn't think they needed my help to do an in-depth study of me, in-depth studies being their specialty. I quickly flipped through the other papers as we chatted, along with what essentially book reports. There was a smattering of electronic mail dispatches from members working in Japan, at the Democratic National Convention in Atlanta and San Francisco. So a Democratic National Convention. Okay, a blurb in one of the group memos caught my eye. On participatory journalism, I have heard it mentioned in conjunction with new journalism of the something Wolf Hunter Thompson variety, where the journalist becomes an actor in the drama he or she is reporting on. But what the student means by it is hard to say. Maybe one tenet is Mayo's, no investigation, no right to speak, so I'll quit guessing. North proceeded to win the upper hand in the interview game, offering no information, yet still getting me to talk. Before I left, I told her I was running out of time, and if they wanted to speak with me, it would have to be sooner rather than later. She said Usden would be the best one to speak with me, and that he'd be back from San Francisco in a few days. He's welcome to call me at home, I said at the door. You already gave him the number, she asked coyly. No, I said, but he has it. What's all these ads? Whoa. Here we go. On August the 2nd, Steve Usden came by my office for a second time. I'm here because our elected leader for the day asked me to come down here, Usden said. I asked him if I could tape record the conversation. He said I was welcome to, but he hadn't come here to give an interview. Then why are you here, I asked. 2 reasons. 1, to tell you that we'll answer all your questions. 2, we like you. We think you're a kindred soul. We thought there might be something bigger we could do together. Like what, I asked. I don't know, said Usden. Maybe start a paper together. Usden told me that he was a reporter too, and that he covered the Democratic Convention for a Japanese TV station. I later checked this out, and it was true. We joked about the Tallahassee case a little. You know that post story, police say finders odd, not criminal? I say police criminal, not odd. Then Usden said that he never understood why police were going after them for Satanism, saying he thought laws against devil worshipping were abolished after the Salem witch hunts. Not that I'm into Satanism, he said. I'm no more interested in Satanism than the Democratic Convention. Really? Okay then. Actually, I'm more interested in the Democratic Convention because I get paid for going there. And doing Satanism as well. Usden said he was in Moscow when the story broke and first heard about it on a shortwave radio. We got our 15 minutes of fame multiplied by 5, he laughed. At the end of our talk, I asked if I could speak with Marion Petty at the meeting where they'd answer my questions. I don't see why not, said Usden. He speaks to me and I'm a reporter. I'd also like to hear what you dig up in your investigation of me, I said. Usden smiled widely. Maybe we'll write a story about you, he said. What were their names and what were their games? Who are these funny persons who play the game of games? Sometimes they act like nice guys or dragons raising hell, but before K flips, they'll change the game. That's why it works so well. Opening and closing stanzas from the Finder's song, The Ballad of Ballads, sung to the tune of Oh Susanna. I can't even read that first word. What the? RTGIAD, ready to go in any direction. It's a salutation for a closing, found on most every Finder's report and is the essence of the group. If you aren't RTGIAD, you can't play the game calls. And with the Finders, everything is a game call. Dress, diet, work, play, travel, marriage, divorce, pregnancy, child rearing, pranks, investigations, even calling games can be a game call. Many people suggested the whole rest was a game call. The point of all this fun and games. Every game call yields knowledge, which members bring to the student, Marion Petty, so he can call better and better games. It's hard to lead a game-playing life in this society, at least without raising eyebrows. While the Florida fracas exposed the Finders to the highest degree of scrutiny, it was not the first time outsiders had tried to understand the group and its motives. After Marion Petty retired from the Air Force as Master Sergeant in 1956, he returned to the Culpeper area, his hometown. One of Petrie's sons told the Washington Post that during the 1960s his father spent his days at the library near Petty Farm, the family's 90-acre property by Old Rag Mountain, and became a student of the world in late 60s to early 70s. Petty Farm was known for its free organic meals and philosophical, first day with a new brain, powwows on the front porch. Petty's son told the Post that his father began a new life around 1971 when he started a commune with his followers in the Glover Park house. Today, members look much more yuppie than hippie, a turnabout that started in the early 80s. Though they've changed with the times, they still don't blend in. They've turned heads in rural Culpeper, where they often show up at town meetings in business suits. John Davis, a Culpeper attorney who represented a former group member in a divorce proceeding 5 years ago, says they never say anything but always take notes. From my perspective, they can have a significant impact on a community like Culpeper, says Davies. I think part of their goal is taking control of the local government. As evidence, Davies says he knows of a stockbroker running for local office with whom they tried to invest $25,000, and they're always researching townspeople. The Finders have combed local real estate titles to see who owns what and how much they owe, says Davies. He's also noticed Finders men walking down the street in coat and ties and making notes on every house they pass. Davies says he thinks there's an old-fashioned motivation behind their game playing. Dollars. Basically, they're doing collectively what an individual investor would do, he says. Oh, sorry, guys. In Washington, several people have posited that the Finders gathered information because they are spies. Daniel Brandt, who has put together a databank of intelligence citations, he sells a spy base says he first met Steve Usden and Jeff Uboy, another group member, in the summer of 84. They approached me because they saw I was doing this database, says Brandt. I posted a note about it in an extremely obscure journal called Reset. Usden and Uboys, I don't know, I can't pronounce that, claimed they represented an outfit called Information Bank, and they gave Brandt software in exchange for information. They were very well informed about counter-spying, says Brandt. He met with them several times over the next year, visiting the warehouse twice. They kept pumping me for information, and I got suspicious, said Brandt. Brandt grew more suspicious when his friends told him odd tales about their dealings with the Information Bank. Realising the depth of the Information Bank's knowledge of the left, he sent out a 3-page memo to progressive groups around DC. Dated November the 10th, 1986, the memo is headed "A Summary of What is Known About Some Very Strange People Who Use Computers and Seek Out Progressives so they can ask a lot of suspicious questions." In addition to Information Bank, Brandt wrote, members said they were from Global Press Review, Hong Kong Business Today, and The Seekers. Members also approached Lou Wolf, a co-editor of Covert Action Information Bulletin, and he helped Brandt check them out. There are several characteristics that lend themselves to the interpretation that this is an information gathering front for a cult of some sort, Brandt wrote in his summary, noting that members may not be told the purpose behind their missions. The guise of computer consulting is an ideal method on spying on the left, he concluded. It would take about 20 seconds to copy an entire mailing list from hard disk onto floppy. If it's a game, it's pretty bizarre, says Brandt, who hasn't heard from the group in a few years. It seems like there must be some sort of impetus behind it. More than a year before the Tallahassee case, Rep. Robert Kastenmeier, D-Wiz, W-I-S, looked into the group at the behest of a constituent whose son had joined. Kastenmeier said he had a hunch that they were intelligence linked, but when he took it to get to the House Intelligence Committee, he couldn't get verification. Kastenmeier's office did learn. Oh, this is getting interesting, guys. Hang on, I've got to make it smaller. That Petty had a background in military intelligence. I'll leave it there, guys. That's part 3 done. We've still got a whole lot to go. It might take me a few months to get through this, but I'm going to read the whole thing, and I'll record it all too, because I think everybody should know about this. This is really interesting. I might be back with another one tonight. I'll see how I go, but if not, I'll do another one tomorrow. Okay, bye guys.